Welcome to NAIFA's Advisor Today podcast series, where we focus on how financial advisors work, live, and give to their local communities and our greater financial services industry. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, NAIFA Nation. Thanks for tuning in to Advisor Today podcast, where we give the voice of the advisor back to you, the representative. And as we come together today, we have a really unique guest that we've never had on the podcast before. So we want to thank Bianca for reaching out and exploring new relationships. As many of you know, we have relaunched the podcast because of feedback we've gotten from you. So continue to send your feedback to us at NAIFA, Zach Hewell specifically. If there's things you want to see on the podcast as we move forward. Again, this is a collective voice, so we all can become better, to hear from the brightest and great minds in the financial and insurance industry. So before we get to today's guest, Zach, do we have a sponsor for today's program?
Sponsor / shout out will be today our longtime partners, the American Council of Life Insurers, or ACLI. The life insurance industry is home to the nation's most trusted and iconic household financial protection brands. And ACLI advocates on behalf of these 275 member companies whose product and services help 90 million American families achieve financial security. And ACLI will continue to partner with us during our 2025 Congressional Conference on May 19th and 20th in Washington, D.C. So come add your voice to the many NAIFA members advocating on behalf of the financial services industry. Check it out at conference.naifa.org. That's conference.naifa.org.
Thank you so much, Zach. We really appreciate you behind the scenes. You know, we can't operate this opportunity without you, so we really, truly appreciate you and all you do. With no further ado, I'll pass it over to our wonderful co-host, Bianca. Bianca, would you go ahead and introduce our guest for today's program?
Yes, I would love to. Hi, everyone. So as you may have picked up on the theme already, in the month of March is International Women's Month. And on the podcast, for the month of March, we have been featuring fierce, powerhouse women leaders in the financial services and advocacy space. And today the trend continues as we are joined by Leah Walters. Leah Walters serves as the Senior Vice President of State Relations at the American Council of Life Insurers, at ACLI for short. She has been with ACLI since about 2004, and she has led the organization's legislative and regulatory advocacy across state governments, including work with the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, the NAIC, and various state legislature and governor associations. Leah, we are so excited to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, Leah, so welcome. We're super excited to have you. So tell us a little bit about your role at ACLI. I mean, you have a very important role, but tell us a little bit about how ACLI helps us as an advisor and also the general public.
Sure. Great. Thank you. So I've been with ACLI about 20 years now. I actually started as one of the directors for the Mid-Atlantic states and then became deputy. And now I'm the senior vice president of our team, our state relations team, which consists of about 15 people. We have 10 directors, 5 that live throughout the country in their territory. And the remaining 5 of us live here in D.C. Work here in DC. We don't actually live in DC, but we work here in DC. We have 4 analysts that help us with legislation, and then 1 assistant who oversees all of us and keeps us on track. What we do as a state relations team is that as soon as sessions start, we're reading bills, we're inputting them into our own system, we're sharing them with members, we're getting their feedback. And then we begin our advocacy in the states, a lot of which we often work with you all in the states. And so it's been a great partnership. And that's how our team works.
So, Leah, that's fascinating about ACLI and the work that they're doing. But tell us a little bit about your background and your background being from accounting and also on the legal side. How do those skill sets really help you in your current role?
Sure. Yes, being an accountant actually helps me with my budget. We have a team of 15. We also have 35 counsel in the states, lobbyists that lobby on our behalf, and we belong to 25 state trades in the states. So it really does help me stay on budget internally. But it also helps legislatively when we have legislation that might have a fiscal impact or financial impact to our members. So that helps. And then, the legal background helps, just really helps me with reading legislation or working on amendments that we may need at the drop of a dime. So it's very helpful to be, help have those two traits when I look at legislation.
Awesome. Bianca, your guess. So go ahead. I'll pass the ball to you for the next question.
Sure. So, Leah, thank you for giving us the background of your career and everything. But I am curious as to the transition from being in the accounting and legal space to state advocacy, specifically in insurance policy. It's a very specific, field to be in. So can you kind of tell us a little bit about why state advocacy? Why didn't you go the federal route? And how did you get into insurance?
Sure. Great. Thank you. So I graduated with an accounting degree, and I actually started working for USF&G, which is a property and casualty company out of Baltimore. And that I worked in the annual reporting department. So it was interesting work. And then I sort of went to internal audit, which was even more interesting, which sort of led me to the conclusion that I wanted to be in advocacy. So I went to law school at night, and then began my advocacy with USF&G, and then our company merged with the St. Paul, and they didn't have a state relations team on the East Coast. So it's sort of just all worked out organically.
Very nice.
And then from there, I went to, ACLI.
Very cool. And so, I feel, I feel like the insurance space is very unique in the sense that it is a heavily state regulated industry, and that when working in the insurance space, it is crucial to have that pulse on what is going on in all 50 states. And so from your perspective, and I guess by extension ACLI's perspective, what are some of the biggest legislative and regulatory challenges currently facing the life insurance market, industry, what have you, on the state level?
Yeah, Bianca, you're right. There are very few industries that are regulated at the state level, and insurance is one of them. And so that in and of itself leads to advocating in all 50 states. But I think our biggest challenges recently in the past few years have been on privacy and AI legislation, in which both of those issues, the bills are drafted to apply to all businesses in the state. Which is challenging for us because we're already regulated at the insurance commissioner level, and we already have privacy laws that have been around for 100 years. So we're in a unique situation in that we want to continue to be regulated by our regulator, which is the insurance commissioner. And so we need to go in on these bills and we say, listen, we understand why you're including us, but we think we should be excluded because we already have privacy laws and we're already complying with AI and AI Bulletin, which the NAIC adopted last year. So we're in a unique position versus other businesses. And then I would say the other big challenge is that every state's unique in how long it's in session. Some states are 30-60. Some states are 3 to 6 months. We have about 10 states that are in session year round. So that in and of itself poses a different challenges. Some bills will move very quickly and you've got to be there and or have counsel on the ground. The other states, you may have time to, the bill's going to drag out a little. It's not important at the beginning of the session. And then I guess the other thing that's important when you're talking about state advocacy is right now, 38 states have a political trifecta, meaning one party controls both chambers of the legislature and the governor's office. And so you've got to work to that. You've got to understand it's either all Republican or it's either all Democrat, and have the right counsel and, sort of maneuver that. So, that's where we partner with organizations like NAIFA that have boots on the ground. And that's very important to us. And I think it's very important, particularly in those 38 states that have a political trifecta.
Yes, I could not agree more with everything that you said. However, I do want to go back to for a quick second and just touch on the aspect of not only being on top of whatever bills and regulations are in play and maintaining those relationships on the ground, but it's also important to keep in mind that every state, for the most part, they do things differently. They have very specific procedures in place that can absolutely impact whether a bill or a regulation passes or dies, for lack of a better term here. And so,
Sure.
Yeah. And so I think, and what I love about working with ACLI in this capacity is that your state relations team, your regional vice presidents, I think it's what they're called, like based on regions, they have incredible relationships and incredible insights and to not only legislators but also regulators as well. And so whenever a priority bill or reg does come about, I feel like our partnership is just so synergetic because NAIFA having 50 state chapters, we have members in all states. We have that grassroots presence and something that I truly feel like in the depths of my soul when it comes to being in this space. Nothing is more impactful than hearing the messaging from the people that these laws and regulations will impact directly. These are constituents. These are people that are serving communities and that will feel the effects of bills and regulations. So I just really wanted to point that out, that state advocacy has so many little pieces that are so integral to seeing things pass or not pass, especially in a state regulated profession,
Sure, absolutely. Nobody wants to hear from someone in Washington. So it's important to have boots on the ground. And I say that as somebody who works in Washington, but I live in Baltimore, so I can say it.
No, absolutely. I'm also born and raised in the DC area, so I understand that as well. And so, but I do want to talk a little bit about some of the legislative and regulatory victories that we have seen through the NAIFA ACLI partnership. And since I've been with NAIFA for the past 3 years, one of the biggest initiatives that NAIFA has worked closely with ACLI on is state adoption of the NAIC suitability and annuity transactions model. And to date, we have 48 states that have adopted the model, which is awesome. And I think I was trying to remember this, but before we started recording, but I think when I started in my current role at NAIFA, there were maybe 20 states. And that's like a hard maybe. And I started with NAIFA in January of 2022. So maybe, Leah, you might have your memory might be better than mine. But in my time, just seeing how closely NAIFA worked with ACLI to ensure that this uniform best interest standard was adopted in all the states, it was and still is a really big priority. And Leah, I'd love to kind of hear a little bit about you, like what kind of like work behind the scenes ACLI was doing to in terms of legislative strategy to get to move forward with the uniform of adoption in the states.
Sure. Yeah, the amendments were adopted to the NAIC suitability regulation in December of 2020. And we're at 48 states today, which is early of 2025. So that's really, in my mind, that's 4 years. And if you know anything about the NAIC, it's that nothing happens fast. The average time to adopt a model at the NAIC is 7 years. So the fact that we can be at 48 in 4 years is record speed. And our partnership with NAIFA in those states has been absolutely critical. Again, you need the boots on the ground. Some of these states had to adopt it by legislation. Some had to adopt it by regulation. So it was critical to know which way they had to go. It was important to have the NAIFA agents come in and say, this is really important to the industry, along with ACLI. And I think it really made a difference. I think the fact that it was an NAIC model, NAIFA wholly supported it, ACLI supported it. There were other trades that supported it. The fact that we've been able to get to 48 so quickly, I think, in my mind, is just astounding. The 2 states that are left are New Jersey, and they actually have a proposal that's been proposed. We're just waiting for the 30-day period to expire. So that's any day. And DC has indicated to us that they are ready to introduce the proposal any day. It has been through its internal review and it's ready to go. They just needed the AG's office to sign off, and they have. So it's been a great success story, one that we will, hope to emulate, for all future issues. And I think we're sort of doing that a little bit now with some producer licensing mandates. In the states. We've been partnering together and identifying. First of all, we had to identify the states that had producer pre-licensing mandates. We had to identify them. Then we had to go out and figure out whether they needed legislation or regulation. And we've partnered up with NAIFA. And so far, we're up to 29 states that have made corrections, and we have active legislation in North Carolina and California. So it's really working well.
I could not agree more. I think, and something that I'm very passionate about in my current role is taking advantage of these really amazing coalition partners, and as well as other fellow insurance trade associations to further drive the messaging to drive forward change. And in my day-to-day, I probably interact with someone from your staff, Leah, almost daily, and every single time it is always so impressive just how diligent your team is, and how our collaboration efforts really drives through so many legislative and regulatory victories. And currently, our organizations are working very closely on a slew of other bills. Starting off with the fiduciary bill in Indiana, which I believe last week we got some positive news that there is going to be, if not there already is, an industry exemption, which is awesome. And I know our NAIFA Indiana chapter was working really closely with your on the ground lobbyist, and I think also during our chapter's legislative day last week or the week before last, that this fiduciary bill was a very big talking point. And I know last week during the NAIC meeting, ACLI hosted a state engagement event with the Indiana insurance commissioner and their staff. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So last week, ACLI, the Indiana State Trade, and the NAIFA Indiana organized a special reception with Indiana legislators and the Indiana Department of Insurance while at the NAIC spring meeting. Normally the spring meeting, this might not work but all the pieces fell in place. We were in Indiana, the legislators were in session, and we were located right across the street from the Capitol. So it was a perfect opportunity to bring our members in, host a special reception. We had over 22 member companies. NAIFA had many agents there. And the entire, insurance commissioner, Holly Williams Lambert, attended with her entire senior team. And I know many folks got a chance to speak with her and her team about Senate Bill 3 and this language that would have swept supplemental benefits into a new fiduciary standard. And so everyone had the opportunity to meet with them to let them know about their concerns. Joining us at the meeting was Senate Insurance Committee member Aaron Freeman and House Insurance Committee member Matt Lehman, who actually owns an insurance agency and has been very influential at NCOIL. We were a little disappointed with the attendance. There were a few others that were there, but they were in caucus that day. And so sometimes they can't get out. There's nothing you can do to change that. You just go with what you got. But our state trade executive partner, Trent Hahn, was able to capitalize on that engagement day by handing out our fact sheet that night at a Republican caucus dinner and communicate all of our concerns about Senate Bill 3, which was actually scheduled for a hearing in the House the next morning. So thanks to all this outreach the day before, they voted to unanimously approve an amendment that exempted producers and supplemental benefits from the bill. So the timing was right. Our partnership was right. It just was a great event.
Awesome. And I remember when you first told me about that event, I remember thinking how lucky is it that it fell during the NAIC meeting? Because I feel like, those meetings are set so far in advance. So I'm very grateful that the event worked out, and I'm even more grateful that NAIFA Indiana had the opportunity to attend. And I also want to be mindful of time, but I do also want to quickly chat about some other bills the bills and legislation that ACLI and NAIFA have been working closely on. So we have seen, as of right now, a trio of various tax proposals in Washington State, Maryland, and Minnesota. And without getting into the depths of it, policy wise, essentially what each bill does is that it would implement some kind of service or sales tax on a variety of different industries, and one of those being financial planning. So Leah, what is your take on this? Because I'll speak for myself. It was not exactly on my bingo card that there would be this many tax proposals in the state. So what's your take on it? Why are states bringing forth these sorts of tax proposals and imposing it on financial planning services, which is something that which one could argue that these kinds of bills can perhaps impede someone from accessing those kinds of services?
Sure. Yeah, we started to see these a little bit last year, some sales tax expansion bills to include all services, which, as you say, would include our financial products. And we have managed to get ourselves out of it. I think part of the problem is legislators don't understand how we, the insurance industry, is taxed. We're taxed, our premium tax, we're taxed on a gross basis. And so, this is December 2024 was the last year for COVID payments. And so I think what we're seeing in the states is that now there are budget problems in probably all states. We're seeing that in Maryland big time, and we're seeing it in other states. So the COVID money has ran out. Programs were expanded. They're trying to find a way to fund them. And they draft these very broad sales tax expansion bills. And I think once we get in there and we start explaining who we are, what we do, and how we're taxed, they do understand a little bit better. So far, I'm going to knock on wood, we've been pretty lucky.
Yeah. Okay. Well, That is very promising to hear, because as I go through my bill tracking on a weekly basis, I see these bills. I'm just like, how did we get here? But I'm trusting your judgment. I trust your wisdom. And so, Leah, you and I kind of talked slash nerded out on state policy and state bill. So, Chris, I'm gonna bring you back into the fold, and I'm gonna pass the baton back over to you.
Well, all of it's fascinating. I think as an advisor who is on the outside looking in, I think all advisors would like to know more about the procedures that happen behind the scenes that keep our industry safe. We just don't know what questions to ask. So we rely on people like you, Bianca, and you people and like Leah to be good at what you do so that we can go out and help families acquire and protect the things they care about the most. My questions are more along the lines of, what does this really look like? So Leah, let me ask a question. How does ACLI stay proactive in their approach to these things? Like, how is it not just, all of a sudden one day you wake up and you're like, oh, these 6 things are happening all the same. How do you and your team stay proactive? And this will go to Bianca too. How do you stay proactive at doing some of the things to keep us abreast of what's happening and also to keep advisors involved in the process?
So, Chris, one of the things we do in like October or November of every year is we come up with an at-risk chart. And so we identify existential challenges that we think could arise in the following year, and which states do we think that those issues may arise. So we identified 7 issues this year in about 26 states, which comes up to about 100 times we think these existential challenges could be impacted. And those existential challenges are really some of the things that are pretty simple. Privacy, AI, anything that would impede your ability to underwrite a life insurance product. And I don't think legislators understand our products as much as they do property, casualty, and health. So that's a big challenge. Any little tweak they make that would impact our underwriting ability is we consider an existential challenges. And then anything that would impact sales tax or taxes, how we're taxed as an industry, we consider an existential challenge. So we start with the basics, and then we just add some things to it. We knew that we wanted to proactively amend some of the pre-licensing mandates. We know that we want to keep an eye out on any state that wants to create a state-run only program for whatever line of business, long-term care, family medical leave, savings plans. We want to keep an eye on those because, we've been in the industry, life insurers, I'm saying, not you or me, because we've been in the industry 175 years. We're pretty good at what we do, right? Our industry. And so anything that's gonna, if a state thinks they can do it a little bit better than us, we want to be at the table to say, oh, we're pretty good at this. So please don't forget about the private market. So that's, so some things are just always an existential challenge. And other things we try to be proactive in as we, begin a new year.
So then I'm going to ask this question: with the obvious changes happening in front of us, we've seen a lot of swings in the political environment as it deals with the control of certain parts of the governments, right? And so, with that being said, has that led to more of the same, or has it led to new opportunities that we're unaware of yet because we're reacting as advisors, right? But things we need to be on the lookout for because of these changes that are happening in some of the political environments.
Sure, I think you're absolutely right. States are reacting to the new administration. We're seeing in the Democratic states, they're rushing to pass bills that would, allow for a company to consider, and I'm just using this as an example, DEI. In Republican states, we're seeing legislation, particularly we have a bill in Florida that would prohibit a company from doing business with the state of Florida if it has a DEI program. So we're seeing state legislation, but trying to react to what the new administration is doing. For the most part, we have not seen those bills move. They're political, they're touchy, but they're not moving in the end. So I think hopefully, and I'm going to knock on wood again, that's a good thing.
So the narratives, it's interesting. So I do want to, I'm going to ask Bianca this first, and then I'm going to come to you. So the narratives that we see on the let's call it the news cycles, right? The sound clips, right? A lot of the things that we're seeing, how is it affecting I'll comment on how it's affecting our clients, right? And you guys can comment on how it's affecting advisors, Bianca, and then Leah, if you can comment on how it's affecting just even your lobbyists. How are they operating? Because they're constantly, like fire. But so what I'm seeing in the marketplace is because of the way in which people are getting information, right? They're getting fed the information through news sources, through social media, through our phones or whatever, through clips or whatever it may be, is that they're taking sound bites and they're making them into, this is the reality of the world, right? This is the reality of the world. Even though there's steps for those things to come to fruition, it's spiking a level of fear and uncertainty, right, with clients, which then in turn actually works very favorable in the insurance industry. Because when people are uncertain about stocks, bonds, mutual funds, things like that, what they tend to do is they run to safety and security. And that is the insurance markets and spaces have those opportunities. So we're seeing actually an increase of actually people. I have people in my clientele that we call them every quarter to meet with them. They haven't met with me in 3 years. They're like, no, Chris, we're good. We're getting 20%. No, that's good. The moment things started to shift, and the moment we started to see the markets be a little volatile, is the moment they're like, oh, I need to meet. We need to meet now. Like we need to hurry up and meet. So there's a sense of urgency, but it's creating uncertainty amongst the general public is what I'm seeing I'm speaking of my clients, and I can't speak for other people's clients, but that's what I'm seeing. So Bianca, what are you seeing on your side with the change, how it's affecting advisors and potential NAIFA?
Sure. I mean, I think what you said about the like the flips we've seen politically in the States, it has made people more reactive, and in just what I like, just in this state session season that we've been in, I have seen a lot more like just like reactivity to different proposals that we've seen come through, whether it's like a proposal that that might not pass, but that doesn't really matter. It's the fact that this particular concept is being filed into existence. It's and couple that with the uncertainty that all this market volatility is creating. It's putting people more on edge, and it's making people be more proactive in, okay, wait, so this isn't as much of a sure thing as it used to be. What can I do to continue making it a sure thing? So I'm seeing more knee-jerk reactions, but it's all coming from a place of like, we want stability to continue serving our clients, because at the end of the day, our clients are the priority. What can we, and I'm not an advisor, so I'm speaking generally. What can we do as advisors on the front lines to ensure that these policies that are coming into place are still friendly to the industry.
Last question here before we go to our speed round here. Question was, well, you heard how my aspect, I just gave my personal opinion, kind of what my observation is, how clients are reacting to the changes. We went to Bianca, and Bianca mentioned the fact how NAIFA is preparing its advisors for some of these changes. And so we're going to come to you and say, because you are the bridge between kind of the process of the laws, rules, guidelines at the state level, and some of the bills, and trying to interpret some of those and how it's going out. So how are you preparing your team? What is your team doing to prepare for these changes that are rapidly happening? And going forward, how should we be reacting?
How we're preparing the team is that we're trying to give them as much data as possible as they walk into capitals. And we've been putting a lot of information together for the federal Super Bowl of tax, and we're using that in the states. Like, some of the numbers that we're coming up with is by 2030, 1 in 5 Americans will be 65 or older. Annuities provide, and guarantee retirement income for seniors, and that we have saved Social Security expenditures $100 billion. And so we're trying to use this in the states to say, please don't attack our product. We're saving Social Security $100 billion because of the annuities they're buying. And we're doing the same for sort of DI and long-term care and life insurance. We're actually putting numbers together, and we think that's making a difference. I said earlier, I'm not sure legislators understand our products as much as they do property, casualty, and health insurance. But so that's why we're using numbers. We really want them to know who we are in the states and what we do for Americans.
Leah, that's prolific. The data, right? Because big data, you can't deny big data, right? If we're able to show we're saving Social Security $180 million, I mean, let's call it what it is. One of the largest issues and challenges that we've got during our lifetime in this industry is trying to figure out how to optimize people's Social Security, right? So Social Security continues to be there as a piece of their planning in the future. And obviously that's behind a lot of things, is that how do they save Social Security? How do they continue to create it? How do they continue to make it? Like, what happens with that along the way? And so it'll be interesting over the next 10 years, 5 to 10 years, really the next 5, to see what kind of rules and guidelines, what kind of regulations. But we do know that in partnership with ACLI and partnership with NAIFA, we collectively are better advisors because we are more informed about information. And all of you NAIFA advisors out there who have not been involved, is you have to get off the sidelines and get active and show up and go to the state meetings. ACLI calls and needs representatives in your state. You got to go to your state meetings. You got to go to the local meetings. You got to go to the national meetings. You got to get out and you got to get your voice heard from a grassroots perspective. So that is my 2 cents on it. Leah, we love having you. We want to have you back for at least a round 2 here. But before we go to our kind of lightning round here, that's what we call it, Leah. So well, before we go to the lightning round, is there anything you would like to share with NAIFA Nation? Your NAIFA is listening.
Sure. I would just say that, educating, and you all know this, I know you know that, but educating legislators about our industry is so important, because right now there's sort of this little anti-insurance attitude in the states. You have wildfires and hurricanes and, healthcare problems. And so we need to explain who we are, that we are the life insurance industry. We get one bite at the apple, but we provide 90 million Americans with financial security. And I think that's really important as we move forward every year, it's just educating legislators about our industry.
Bianca, why don't you go ahead and take our guest, since you are working connectedly with her group. Why don't you take her to the lightning round? I'll ask one question in the lightning round, but it's your world. We just live in it.
Oh gosh. Okay. All right. Well, my lightning round question is it's a little self-serving and so us Marylanders, as Leah and I are both from Maryland, we love Maryland blue crabs. It's basically a personality trait. So Leah, where's the best place in Baltimore to get crabs?
The best place in Baltimore is a little place that's probably 3 miles from my house, and it's called Costa's. And it's a restaurant bar. You can sit on either side, but they have fabulous crabs year round, which is very rare.
That is rare, and I just wrote that down. My husband and I are going to the Nats Orioles series in May, and I want to get some blue crabs while I'm out there.
It's about 20 minutes from the city, so perfect place.
Amazing. Chris, your turn.
All right. So, Miss Leah, what's your favorite place to eat? What's your favorite food to eat?
Favorite food would probably be Italian. I'm not a big steak person, so, I love a nice lasagna or stuffed shells or spaghetti bolognese, something like that.
Love it. If you could go back in history, if you could go back and tell your 21-year-old self, give your 21-year-old self advice, what advice would you give yourself?
Slow down. Slow down, read the bills, get to know them, don't look for the quick answer. Everything's quick today, right? You listen to a 20-minute iPod or a 5-minute clip here and there on TikTok. I would just say, slow down, read, and you'll be better for it in the end.
Your proudest moment in the life insurance business or in your career so far?
That would be passing the NAIC viatical settlement model in Delaware. And for 4 years in a row, we had a very bad return of premium bill. It was a bill that would have required insurance companies to return the premium, even if the policy was fraudulently obtained under Stoli. And so we got the NAIC model adopted, and that was my proudest moment.
Last question for you from me. If you could go back in history and have dinner with anybody you want, mother, brother, someone who's passed, who's no longer with us, a famous person, doesn't matter, or somebody who's here today, who would it be and why?
Wow, that's a tough one. I didn't even know that was coming too. So you put me on the spot there. Goodness gracious. Anyone. I would say Elton John. I love his music. I never went to a concert, so I'd love to sit down and have drinks with him.
That's awesome. So, Bianca, do you have one more or you're done?
I do have one more, but before I ask, I just want to say Elton John is an icon. So I love that answer. And then my last question, in honor of rounding out International Women's Month, Leah, what advice do you have to the next generation of women leaders that are coming through the financial services and advocacy space?
Again, I would say read, right? Be knowledgeable. That's important because whether you're male or female, if you're smart, and I don't mean smarter, but if you outread somebody and you know what the bill means and you know the impact on your industry, you win. So know your stuff, know your bill, know your industry, and just, I guess that would be my only advice, really.
Awesome. Leah, it is wonderful to have you here joining us, and we love our relationship with ACLI, and we look forward to continuously growing and developing a deeper bond with you and your organization, and also we celebrate the fact that you guys have new leadership. We didn't comment on that at all, but you guys are under new leadership. So you new vision, new directions, refresh. And it's awesome. We're really excited to explore what the future looks like with ACLI. I want to thank Miss Bianca, who is always so talented and capable of understanding from our GR side. When you're at congressional conference and you see Bianca walking around, don't go up and ask her for autograph about, hey, will you sign my podcast? No, don't do that. Go up and have conversation with her about the things that can impact you and your clients and also your industry and also where you need to be, shaking hands, kissing babies. I will tell you right now that we have new representation in a lot of districts. One of the asks is that we need representation. We need individuals that we don't have representation in. And you can see Bianca at congressional conference because we are looking for feet on the streets in those new districts where there's new faces and we need to build new relationships. So touch base with her. With that being said, I will close us out. Thanks everyone for tuning in to Advisor Today podcast, where we bring the voices of our industry. And as you heard today, impacting the 600 million of Americans in which we serve. And it's such a blessing for us to be able to do so and do so in an honorable way. Thanks all for tuning in to Advisor Today podcast, where we give the voice of the advisor back to you. Thanks. We appreciate it. See you next week.
Thanks for joining us for NAIFA's Advisor Today podcast series. Make sure to subscribe to get future episodes. And if you're interested in coming on the show, let us know.